Fenella, I'll just explain to the listeners a little bit about the activities that we've got running at the moment this year. But I then sort of said that the whole idea first came afloat in 2003, I believe. Is that right?
Yes, it was. It was in, I can't remember what part of 2003, but we had a golf tournament to raise money for Mulberry Grove School, which was the inaugural Carrick Irish Pub Golf Tournament. And Phil Judd was really keen on seeing some sort of sea-based program at Mulberry Grove School, because he was aware of kids here who didn't actually get to experience the sea. They didn't go snorkeling, they'd never been on a yacht, things like that. And Phil, being a sailor, really wanted to see kids learning how to sail, amongst other things. So over a few beers at the Carrick one night, he and Angela and I spoke about it and came up with ideas, and spent quite a few months developing the idea to form a sea education academy of some sort under the wings of Mulberry Grove School. The first thing we had to do was become an incorporated society, and this was when we called it the Sea Education Aotea, a bit of a play on the words. It all spells sea. We also felt that it needed to stand alone, even though it was coming under Mulberry Grove School. We wanted to see it as a separate entity, and this was particularly important for funding, and also because part of the vision was to see the organisation covering the whole island, not just the Mulberry Grove School pupils. So when we had formed the incorporated society, we then had to find trustees, and we got people like the principal of Mulberry Grove School. I think the chairperson of the board of trustees was also on the original committee, and there were a couple of other interested parties as well as Phil and myself and Angela. Phil had made some connections with the Devonport Waterwise, who, it's a sailing program for children. I think they do it within schools on the mainland. And so they offered to come and do a training program so we could train up some instructors to teach the kids how to sail. And they donated a huge number of wetsuits for the kids to use. And they also offered us a couple of Optimus sailing dinghies at a very cheap price. I think they were $300 or something. Before that, we actually, with the money that we raised at the Carrick Irish Pub Golf Tournament, we bought the first Optimus yachts and 5 kayaks with the paddles and some life jackets. Because it hadn't become a legal entity at that point, we had to put it all under Mulberry Grove School until such time that the incorporation had gone through. The biggest hurdles we had in that first few years was keeping our trained instructors interested, because they were all volunteers. We had problems finding people who wanted to be a coordinator and who were committed to the program. And also with the changes that were going on at Mulberry Grove School, actually developing a program with the school was quite difficult, because there were quite a few changes in principal, in the leadership and staff at the school. One of the visions was to bring all the other schools and the correspondence schools into the program. We had this belief that the programs were free for the island kids. In the incorporation papers, we set it up so that if we wanted to set up a school where people paid to be trained, it's all there in the incorporation papers. By that, we could see that in the future, if we brought kids from mainland schools, they could come and stay on the island and do some training, whether it was kayaks or snorkeling or the sailing, and we would charge them, and that would be a way to actually raise some money. It hasn't actually got to that point yet. It's everything's there for it to be developed that way, but it's just getting the programs established has been the main thing. We got boats donated by the Okupu Sailing Club. We had a couple of private people donated boats. I think some funding was raised through sponsorship from local businesses where they got their name on the sides of the boats. I think that's the main gist of it. It's had a few changes in the trustees over the years. We've had quite a lot of success getting funding mainly from lotteries, I think. That was the coordinator's job. Well, I think that's about it. At the moment the coordinators rent, and that seems to be going really well. I think there's about 6 to 8 little yachts. The kayaks get taken out each summer. I mean, Phil's dream was to teach kids their basic yacht master or boat masters, have first aid courses, things like that. And I don't know where rent's gone, but I think I've run out of things to say.
Okay, that's good. Look, Fenella, I'm still right here. I've just been taking notes and
Cool.
paying attention to that. I have been taking notes because as coordinator, I always want to keep these ideas going. And, of course, bringing in, I mentioned just actually before you came on there that Carly is interested in doing more courses such as Coast Boatmaster. And we've got various things line up, and there's always more to do than what's actually got time. But there's a lot of good things happening. Now, I've because I've of course inherited all the files of the Sea Trust as well. I've just been looking here at one of the planning documents that kind of assessed it, and it's a SWOT analysis that talks about the strengths, weaknesses, and also threats. And I'd just be curious with your experience in setting an organisation like this, which will be similar to other projects that you will have been involved in, that listeners will be involved in. The threats that listen here at the time were, there's 4 of them. Apathy, that the idea just gets sidelined and doesn't catch interest. That ongoing funding, of course, is always an issue, and I've been involved in making sure, and we have been successful and lucky with getting lotteries board funding for that, so that's still steady. But you made a reference also to trustees, etc., and there's certain trustee fatigue and also overuse of volunteers, which was listed on the SWOT analysis. And lastly, loss of focus resulting from management board changing objectives or hijacking facility into. So those threads that were listed at the outset, how do you think they were managed as the project grew?
I think they're still being managed. There's still areas of weakness. I think our volunteers is a huge area, and we're only a little community, and it's everyone's doing a lot of things for the community. So sometimes you get to the point where people can't take on any more. So there's not the numbers of people to provide the volunteer base that we need for all these little organisations. So I'm not sure how you can get around that. Other than treating them really well. I think the training's a very good start with the Sea Academy to keep volunteers, but I think the next step is just to make sure you keep using your volunteers, with the get them instructing the kids. Other hurdles, yes, I think funding's not too much of a problem. I think we live in a community that's also very transient, so a lot of people coming and going, and I think that creates its own problems because people who are enthusiastic move on. Phil Judd's a really good example of that, who was so enthusiastic for the first few years because he lived here, but then because of kids' schooling and various other things, they moved off the island. So we didn't really have anyone to replace Phil who had that same enthusiasm for a number of years. And then Niall and Dave came on board onto Doug Bridge, and they were the next enthusiastic group of people, and I think it's been going very well since then. What other challenges? Yeah, I think fitting meetings in between other meetings is always a challenge here because so many people are, as I said before, involved in so many different things. You're trying to catch school representatives, and they've got parent-teacher interviews and all sorts of things going on, and so yeah, it isn't always easy to get people together. I think the Skyping with Doug on the mainland has been a big step towards keeping the Sea Academy moving. I think distances are a challenge. You know, we've got Okiwi School and Kaitoki School, who, although we're all familiar of where they are, it's still a big effort to bring them down to do programs. And, you know, transport comes into it, and costs, and keeping kids enthusiastic over a period of time. Now, I think those are the main things.